The camera flashes illuminated the winter evening like fallen stars, each one capturing a moment that would change everything. Among the carefully orchestrated royal appearances and rehearsed smiles, something extraordinary was about to unfold. A 9-year-old princess, dressed in her finest velvet coat, was about to remind the world why authenticity shines brighter than any crown. This wasn't just another royal Christmas event. This was the night Princess Charlotte would steal hearts across the globe and prove that sometimes the most powerful moments come from the most unexpected places. The morning of December 15th began like any other at Adelaide Cottage, with the gentle sound of winter rain tapping against the windows. Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana sat at her bedroom window, watching droplets race down the glass while her mind wandered to the evening ahead. The Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey wasn't just any event, it was her mother's special project, something Princess Catherine had poured her heart into organising. Charlotte had always been different from her brothers. While Prince George carried the weight of future kingship with quiet dignity, and Prince Louis brought infectious joy to every gathering, Charlotte possessed something uniquely her own, an intuitive understanding of people and moments that seemed beyond her years. Her parents had noticed this quality early, the way she could sense when someone needed comfort or when a situation called for exactly the right gesture. The dress rehearsal that morning had gone smoothly. Charlotte had practiced her readings, learned about the charity partners involved, and understood the importance of the evening. But as she sat by her window, something stirred within her, a feeling that this night would be more than just another royal obligation. She couldn't explain it, but she sensed that people needed something real, something hopeful during these challenging times. Princess Catherine entered the room with her characteristic grace, carrying a steaming cup of hot chocolate topped with marshmallows. She had always made sure her children understood that with privilege came responsibility, but also that their humanity should never be hidden behind their titles. As she sat beside Charlotte on the window seat, she noticed the thoughtful expression on her daughter's face. "You're thinking deeply about something," Catherine observed, tucking a strand of Charlotte's hair behind her ear. "Would you like to share what's on your mind?" Charlotte turned from the window, her eyes reflecting a maturity that sometimes surprised even her parents. "Mummy, I know tonight is important for the charities and for showing people we care. But I keep thinking about the children who won't have Christmas presents this year, or the families who are sad because someone they love isn't with them anymore." Catherine felt her heart swell with pride and concern. Her daughter's empathy was both her greatest strength and sometimes her biggest burden. "You're right to think about others, darling. That's exactly why we're doing this service. To remind people they're not alone and to help where we can." "But how do we make sure they really know we understand?" Charlotte asked, her voice carrying the earnestness that made her so endearing to those who knew her well. "Sometimes I think people see us and think we don't have problems or sadness like everyone else." This conversation would prove to be more prophetic than either of them could have imagined. Catherine spent the next hour talking with her daughter about authenticity, about how the royal family's role wasn't to be perfect, but to be a source of hope and connection for people, during both celebrations and struggles. As the afternoon progressed, the household buzzed with preparation. Prince William returned from his morning engagements, immediately sensing the special energy surrounding the evening ahead. The Christmas carol service had become Catherine's signature event, bringing together people from all walks of life to celebrate the season while supporting those in need. Charlotte chose her outfit carefully, a deep burgundy velvet coat that complemented the festive atmosphere while maintaining the elegance expected at such events. But more importantly, she chose her attitude. After her morning conversation with her mother, she had decided that tonight she wouldn't just participate. She would truly connect with everyone she met. The journey to Westminster Abbey gave Charlotte time to observe London preparing for Christmas. The city sparkled with lights. Shop windows displayed their finest decorations, and people hurried along the streets with packages and purpose. But she also noticed the homeless individuals seeking shelter from the cold, the tired faces of people finishing long work days, and the general sense of weariness that seemed to permeate the winter air. Westminster Abbey stood magnificent against the darkening sky, its Gothic towers reaching toward heaven like stone prayers. The ancient building had witnessed centuries of royal ceremonies, but tonight it would host something different, a celebration designed to bridge the gap between tradition and modern compassion. As the royal family arrived, Charlotte took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The flash of cameras was immediate and intense, but instead of the usual quick wave and smile, something compelled her to pause. She looked directly into the crowd of photographers and well-wishers, offering not just a rehearsed smile, but a genuine moment of connection, that seemed to acknowledge each person individually. Inside the Abbey, Charlotte was struck by the diversity of the gathering. Charity workers sat alongside celebrities, community leaders mixed with royal family members, and children from various organizations occupied places of honor. This wasn't just a royal show, it was a genuine community coming together. The service began with traditional carols that filled the ancient space with warmth and joy. Charlotte sang along, her clear voice joining the choir and congregation in songs of hope and celebration. But as the evening progressed, she began to notice individual faces in the crowd. An elderly gentleman wiping away tears during silent night, a young mother holding her child close during prayers, teenagers from youth charities looking amazed to be in such a grand setting. During a pause between musical performances, Charlotte did something that would later be described by royal watchers as both spontaneous and perfectly natural. She quietly left her seat and approached a group of children from a local children's hospital who were attending as special guests. These young people, some still bearing the visible effects of their medical treatments, had been invited to share in the celebration. Without prompting or permission, Charlotte knelt down to their level and began asking about their favorite Christmas songs, their holiday plans, and their experiences at the hospital. Her questions weren't the formal inquiries often associated with royal encounters, but the genuine curiosity of a peer who truly wanted to know about their lives. One little boy, perhaps 6 years old and clearly undergoing cancer treatment, shyly told Charlotte about how he was hoping Santa would bring him art supplies because he loved to draw. Without hesitation, Charlotte asked him what he liked to draw most. His face lit up as he described his favorite subjects: dragons, castles, and brave princesses who went on adventures. "I love drawing too," Charlotte confided, settling more comfortably beside the children. "Sometimes when I'm feeling worried or sad about something, drawing helps me feel better. Do you find that too?" The boy nodded enthusiastically, and suddenly other children began sharing their own stories and interests. Charlotte listened to each one with complete attention, asking follow-up questions and offering her own experiences when appropriate. She wasn't performing for cameras or fulfilling a duty. She was simply being a friend to children who needed one. This interaction, while brief, created a ripple effect throughout the Abbey. Other attendees noticed the genuine warmth of the exchange, the way Charlotte had instinctively known exactly how to connect with these brave young people. But more importantly, the children themselves felt seen and valued in a way that would stay with them long after the evening ended. As the service continued, Charlotte returned to a seat with a new sense of purpose. She had discovered something powerful in that simple interaction, the realization that her position could be used not just for ceremony, but for creating moments of real human connection. The rest of the evening would unfold with this newfound understanding guiding her every action. The Abbey continued to fill with music and prayer, but something had shifted. Charlotte's spontaneous gesture of friendship had set the tone for an evening that would be remembered not for its grandeur, but for its genuine spirit of community and compassion.
As she settled back into her seat, she caught her mother's proud smile and her father's approving nod.
They had witnessed their daughter discover something essential about her role and her character. The first part of Princess Charlotte's memorable evening had established the foundation for what would become a defining moment in her young life. Her natural empathy and genuine desire to connect with others had transformed what could have been just another formal event into the beginning of something much more meaningful. The stage was set for an evening that would touch hearts far beyond the ancient walls of Westminster Abbey. The momentum of Charlotte's genuine interaction with the hospital children had created an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere throughout Westminster Abbey. As the service continued with readings from various community leaders and performances by local choirs, Charlotte found herself seeing the event through entirely new eyes. Each song, each prayer, each moment of silence seemed to carry deeper meaning when viewed through the lens of real human connection rather than royal obligation. When it came time for her own reading, Charlotte approached the ancient lectern with a confidence that surprised even herself. She had practiced the passage many times, a selection from Luke's Gospel about the birth of Christ that spoke to themes of hope and new beginnings. But as she looked out over the congregation, she saw not just a formal audience, but individuals with their own stories, struggles, and dreams. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space as she began to read. But there was something different about her delivery. Instead of the careful, practiced tone often associated with royal readings, Charlotte spoke with the natural warmth and sincerity that had characterized her earlier conversation with the children. She paused at meaningful moments, allowing the ancient words to resonate not just in the physical space of the Abbey, but in the hearts of those listening. And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Saviour, Charlotte read, her young voice giving fresh life to the familiar passage. As she spoke these words, she found herself thinking about her own mother's joy in organizing this service, about the mothers in the congregation who might be facing difficult Christmases, about the universal experience of finding hope even in challenging circumstances. When she finished and returned to her seat, the silence that followed wasn't the polite pause typically given after royal readings. It was the profound quiet that follows a moment of genuine spiritual connection when words have touched something deeper than surface courtesy. Even the usually stoic royal protection officers seemed moved by the authenticity of her delivery. The service continued with performances by the Abbey Choir and guests including several well-known artists who had donated their time to support the evening's charitable goals. But between these formal elements, Charlotte continued to find ways to connect with the people around her. During an instrumental interlude, she noticed an elderly woman sitting alone several rows behind the royal family's section, quietly wiping tears from her eyes. Without drawing attention to herself, Charlotte made her way over to the woman during the brief break between performances. She learned that Mrs. Margaret Thompson was attending the service as a representative of a local senior centre, but that this would be her first Christmas without her husband of 57 years, who had passed away just 3 months earlier. Charlotte sat beside Mrs. Thompson and simply listened as the older woman shared memories of Christmases past, of her husband's love for traditional carols, of how strange it felt to be in such a magnificent setting while feeling so alone. Charlotte didn't offer empty platitudes or royal reassurances. Instead, she shared her own memories of family Christmases, talked about how her great-grandmother had taught her that the people we love never truly leave us, and asked Mrs. Thompson to tell her more about her husband's favorite traditions. He would have loved this service, Mrs. Ogle. Thompson said quietly. Harold always said that Christmas was about bringing people together, regardless of their backgrounds or circumstances. He would have been so impressed to see a young princess taking time to talk with someone like me. Charlotte smiled warmly. I think Harold sounds like a very wise man, and I don't think I'm just a princess sitting here with you. I think I'm just Charlotte, having the privilege of hearing about someone very special. This exchange, while quiet and private, didn't go unnoticed by others nearby. Word began to spread softly through the congregation about the young princess, who seemed less interested in the formalities of the event and more focused on the people attending it. Royal watchers and media representatives began to take note of something unprecedented. A member of the royal family, especially one so young, who appeared to be genuinely connecting with individuals rather than simply fulfilling ceremonial duties. As the service moved toward its conclusion, Princess Catherine announced the evening's fundraising total, an amount that would provide Christmas meals for thousands of families and support for numerous charitable organizations throughout the coming year. But even this announcement, while significant, seemed secondary to the human connections that had been forged throughout the evening. The final carol, O Come, All Ye Faithful, filled the abbey with voices joining together in celebration. Charlotte sang with the enthusiasm of someone who had truly found something to be faithful to. The power of genuine human compassion, as the familiar refrain of O come, let us adore him, echoed through the ancient stones. She looked around at the faces surrounding her and saw not subjects or constituents, but simply people sharing in a moment of community and hope. As the formal service concluded and people began to move toward the reception area, Charlotte found herself surrounded by individuals wanting to thank her for the evening, but also wanting to share their own stories. Representatives from various charities spoke about the impact the fundraising would have on their work. Community leaders expressed gratitude for the recognition their organizations had received. But perhaps most meaningfully, ordinary attendees, people like Mrs. Algebra, Thompson and the children from the hospital approached Charlotte not with formal thanks, but with the warmth reserved for someone who had genuinely touched their lives. During the reception, Charlotte continued to move through the crowd with the same natural grace and authentic interest she had shown throughout the service. She tasted homemade cookies brought by children from local schools, admired artwork created by young people from youth programs, and listened to stories from volunteers who dedicated their time to helping others during the holiday season. One interaction that particularly struck observers occurred when Charlotte met Sarah Chen, a teenager who had been homeless for 6 months, but had recently found stable housing through one of the supported charities. Sarah was initially hesitant to approach the princess, feeling out of place among the elegantly dressed attendees. But Charlotte, noticing the young woman standing alone near the edge of the gathering, made her way over and struck up a conversation. I love your dress, Charlotte began simply. That shade of blue is beautiful on you. Sarah looked down at her outfit, a simple blue dress from a charity shop that she had chosen carefully for this special evening. Thank you, she replied quietly. I wasn't sure if it was appropriate for something like this. Charlotte's response was immediate and sincere. I think you look lovely, and more importantly, I'm so glad you're here. Can you tell me about the organization that helped you? I'd love to know more about their work. What followed was a 20-minute conversation in which Sarah shared her story, the circumstances that had led to her homelessness, the challenges of finding stable housing as a young person, and her dreams of completing her education and eventually working in social services herself. Charlotte listened with complete attention, asked thoughtful questions, and shared her own hopes about using her position to help young people facing difficult circumstances. By the time their conversation ended, Sarah was no longer the hesitant young woman who had been standing alone at the edge of the reception. She was someone who had been truly seen and heard by another person, regardless of titles or circumstances. The transformation was visible to everyone around them, and it perfectly encapsulated what made Charlotte's approach so remarkable. As the evening drew to a close, royal protocol dictated that the family should make their farewell rounds and depart in an orderly fashion. But Charlotte had one more surprise in store for everyone present. Instead of the usual formal goodbye, she asked if she could say a few words to the gathering. Standing on a small platform that had been used earlier for musical performances, Charlotte looked out over the crowd of several hundred people who had shared this special evening with her family. Her parents looked on with a mixture of pride and curiosity, uncertain what their young daughter planned to say, but trusting in her judgment completely. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, Charlotte began, her voice carrying clearly through the reception area. When my mother first told me about this Christmas service, I knew it would be important because she cares so much about helping people. But I didn't realize how much I would learn from all of you. She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing with the honesty that had characterized her entire evening. Tonight I met children who are braver than any princess in any fairy tale, adults who spend their time helping others even when they have their own challenges, and families who are showing what Christmas really means by taking care of each other and their communities. You've taught me that being royal isn't about wearing nice clothes or living in a palace. It's about recognizing that we're all connected and that we all have something to offer each other. The reception area had fallen completely silent as Charlotte spoke, her words carrying the weight of genuine reflection and heartfelt gratitude. So thank you for sharing your stories with me, for letting me be part of your Christmas celebration, and for showing me what it really means to serve others. I hope we can all remember this feeling of being together and carry it with us throughout the year. The applause that followed Charlotte's impromptu speech was unlike anything typically heard at royal events. It wasn't the polite, measured appreciation usually given to royal remarks, but the warm, sustained recognition given to someone who has spoken from the heart and touched the hearts of others in return. As the evening officially concluded and people began to make their way home, carrying with them memories of an unexpectedly meaningful Christmas celebration, Charlotte walked with her family toward their waiting car. The transformation that had begun that morning with her thoughtful questions about connecting with others had culminated in an evening that would be remembered not for its royal grandeur, but for its demonstration of authentic compassion and genuine human connection. The second part of Charlotte's remarkable evening had shown that true leadership isn't about commanding attention or asserting authority, but about creating space for others to be seen, heard, and valued. As she settled into the car for the journey home, Charlotte carried with her dozens of new stories, faces, and friendships that would shape her understanding of her role and her character for years to come. The journey home from Westminster Abbey was unusually quiet, each member of the royal family processing the evening in their own way. Charlotte sat between her parents, still wearing her burgundy velvet coat, her mind replaying the faces and conversations that had made the night so memorable. Outside the car windows, London continued its evening rhythm, but inside, there was a sense that something significant had occurred. Prince William was the first to break the comfortable silence. Charlotte, what you did tonight, the way you connected with people, it was quite remarkable. His voice carried the pride of a father who had watched his daughter discover something important about herself and her purpose. Charlotte turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. It didn't feel remarkable, Papa. It just felt right. Like when you meet someone and you know you're supposed to be friends with them, except it was like that with everyone I talked to tonight. Princess Catherine reached over to take her daughter's hand. That feeling you had, that instinct to connect with people and really listen to them, that's one of the most important qualities anyone can have, especially someone in our position. What you did tonight showed everyone that caring about others isn't just something we talk about, it's something we genuinely feel and act on. As they continued through the London streets, Charlotte noticed that the city looked different to her now. The Christmas lights seemed brighter, the people on the sidewalks more individual rather than just part of a crowd. She found herself wondering about their stories, their holiday plans, their joys and concerns. The evening had awakened in her a deeper awareness of the world beyond, royal duties and privileges. "I keep thinking about Mrs. Jaffe's, Thompson," Charlotte said quietly, about how she said Harold would have loved the service. "I hope she really felt like he was there with her somehow."
"I'm sure she did,"
Catherine replied. "Sometimes the most powerful gift we can give someone is simply our presence and our willingness to listen to what matters to them. You gave that gift to many people tonight." When they arrived at Adelaide Cottage, Charlotte went straight to her room, but not to sleep. Instead, she sat at her small desk and began writing thank you notes. Not the formal acknowledgements that royal protocol might require, but personal messages to the people who had touched her heart during the evening. She wrote to the children from the hospital, thanking them for sharing their drawings and dreams with her. She wrote to Mrs. Thompson, expressing how much it meant to hear about Harold and their Christmas traditions. She wrote to Sarah, encouraging her in her educational goals and expressing hope that they might meet again. Each note was written in Charlotte's careful handwriting, with the genuine warmth that had characterized all her interactions that evening. She didn't write as a princess fulfilling obligations, but as a young person who had been genuinely moved by the connections she had made and wanted to nurture those relationships beyond a single event. While Charlotte wrote her notes, news of the evening was already spreading far beyond London. Social media posts from attendees began appearing, sharing photos and stories of their interactions with the young princess. But these weren't the usual royal event posts focused on glamour or ceremony. Instead, they were personal testimonials about meaningful conversations, genuine connections, and the unexpected joy of being truly seen and heard by someone who could have easily maintained formal distance. Sarah Chen posted a photo of herself with Charlotte, along with a message that would be shared thousands of times. "Tonight I met a princess who made me feel like the most important person in the room. She didn't just ask polite questions, she really listened to my story and made me believe that my dreams matter. This is what hope looks like." Thompson's granddaughter, who had attended the service with her, shared her own observations. "My grandmother has been so lonely since Grandpa died, but tonight, Princess Charlotte sat with her and listened to her talk about him like she genuinely wanted to know about his life. Grandma came home with more light in her eyes than I've seen in months." The parents of the children from the hospital also began sharing their experiences. One mother wrote, "My son has been through so much with his treatment and often feels different from other children, but Princess Charlotte talked to him like any friend would, asking about his interests, sharing her own experiences, making him laugh. He fell asleep tonight talking about how a real princess likes to draw dragons too." As these stories spread online and through news outlets, a different narrative began to emerge about the Christmas Carol service. Rather than focusing on the traditional elements of royal pomp or fundraising totals, the coverage centered on the human connections that had been forged and the authentic compassion that had been demonstrated. Royal commentators, accustomed to analyzing protocol and fashion choices, found themselves writing about something entirely different. They described Charlotte's interactions as representing a new model of royal engagement, one based on genuine relationship building rather than ceremonial obligation. Some compared her approach to that of her late great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, in her ability to make people feel valued and important, while others noted that her style was uniquely her own. The morning after the service, Charlotte woke to find that her evening had become international news, but not in the way royal events typically make headlines. The focus wasn't on her appearance, her behavior according to protocol, or even the success of the fundraising. Instead, the story centered on the individual lives that had been touched and the demonstration of empathy that had surprised and inspired observers. At breakfast, her brothers teased her good-naturedly about her newfound fame. Prince George, with the dry humor that was becoming characteristic of his personality, commented, "Well, Charlotte, it looks like you've figured out how to be royal without being boring." Prince Louis, ever enthusiastic, declared that he wanted to meet all the new friends Charlotte had made, especially the boy who liked to draw dragons. His innocent excitement reminded Charlotte that what had felt natural and right to her had indeed been something special and meaningful. As the family discussed the previous evening over breakfast, Charlotte began to understand the broader impact of her actions. Her parents explained how her approach had shown people a different side of the royal family, one that prioritized human connection over formal distance, authentic care over ceremonial duty. "The most important thing," Prince William explained, "is that you weren't performing or trying to create an impression. You were simply being yourself. And your authentic self happens to be someone who cares deeply about others." That authenticity is what made such a powerful impact. Throughout the following days, the effects of Charlotte's Christmas service continued to ripple outward. The charities involved reported unprecedented interest from potential volunteers and donors. The stories shared by attendees inspired others to reach out to elderly neighbors, support local youth programs, or simply approach their own daily interactions with greater empathy and attention. Charlotte received hundreds of letters from people around the world who had been touched by the stories of her evening. Children wrote to tell her about their own artistic projects, inspired by her conversation with the young boy who loved to draw. Teenagers shared their own experiences of overcoming challenges, encouraged by Sarah's story and Charlotte's response to it. Adults wrote about being reminded of the importance of truly listening to others, particularly elderly community members who might be feeling isolated during the holiday season. But perhaps the most meaningful responses came from those who had been at the service itself. Mrs. Thompson sent a handwritten letter thanking Charlotte for the time they had spent together, and sharing that she had decided to volunteer at the local senior centre, wanting to provide the same kind of companionship to others that Charlotte had given to her. The children from the hospital sent a group drawing, a collaborative artwork showing the Christmas service with Charlotte, surrounded by all the new friends she had made that evening. Each child had contributed something to the drawing, creating a colourful and joyful representation of the connections that had been forged. Sarah Chen wrote to share that she had been accepted into a college preparation program and was working toward her goal of studying social work. She credited her conversation with Charlotte as a turning point in believing that her own experiences could be valuable in helping others facing similar challenges. As Christmas Day approached, Charlotte found herself approaching the holiday with a new understanding of its meaning. The gifts under the tree, the traditional meals, and the family celebrations remained important, but they were now part of a larger awareness of Christmas, as a time for recognizing the connections that bind all people together. On Christmas morning, as the royal family exchanged gifts and shared their traditional breakfast, Charlotte announced that she wanted to establish an annual tradition of her own. She proposed that each year she would choose one of the organizations or individuals she had met through royal events and find a way to maintain ongoing support and connection with them throughout the year. Her first choice was the Children's Hospital, where several of the young people she had met were patients. She wanted to organize regular art sessions where children could work on creative projects together, with her participating not as a visiting dignitary, but as a fellow artist who happened to love drawing dragons and castles. Her second choice was the Senior Centre, where Mrs. Thompson volunteered. Charlotte proposed establishing a program where young people and older adults could share stories and learn from each other, creating the kind of intergenerational connections that had made her conversation with Mrs. Thompson so meaningful. As Charlotte's parents listened to her thoughtful plans for continuing the connections she had made, they realized that the Christmas Carol service had achieved something far beyond its intended goals. It had not only raised funds for important causes and brought the community together for a beautiful evening of celebration, but it had also awakened in their daughter a deep understanding of her role and her capacity to make a meaningful difference in individual lives. The Christmas service had shown Charlotte that being a princess wasn't about wearing tiaras or cutting ribbons, but about using her position and her natural compassion to create moments of genuine human connection. She had discovered that the most powerful thing she could offer others wasn't her royal status, but her authentic attention and care. As the Christmas season continued, and the stories of that remarkable evening spread, Charlotte began to understand that she had stumbled upon something that would shape her entire approach to royal life. The evening at Westminster Abbey had been just the beginning of a journey toward a new kind of royal service, one based on relationship rather than ceremony, on authentic connection rather than formal duty. The young princess who had approached the Christmas service with questions about how to truly connect with others had found her answer in the most natural way possible, by simply being herself and allowing her genuine care for others to guide her actions. In doing so, she had not only touched the lives of those she met that evening, but had also inspired countless others to approach their own relationships and communities with greater empathy and attention. The Christmas Carol service at Westminster Abbey would be remembered as the night Princess Charlotte found her voice, her purpose, and her unique way of making the ancient institution of royalty relevant and meaningful for a new generation. It was the night she learned that the greatest crown anyone can wear is the recognition of their connection to all other people, and the greatest service anyone can provide is the gift of their genuine presence and care.